chapter, Romans. As of old, or there are always a remnant of old, and the remnant simply means the elect of God. You're not elected because you're born by accident into some ethnic group. Has nothing to do with that. A descendant of Abraham after the flesh is not necessarily the elect of God. You are chosen from any race, any nation, any religion. Well, how the choice is made, no one knows. It remains the Father's secret. But Paul qualifies it in this manner. There is a remnant to this day, called by grace. And if by grace, then it is not on the basis of works. Otherwise, grace would no longer be grace. Therefore, no one who is called and sent can brag. If he brags, he is not. Because it's all by grace. He didn't earn it. It's not by merit. It is simply a secret known only to the Father. So when we are called, incorporated into the body of infinite love, who is God, and then sent, that no one who is sent raise a finger to brag, to boast, for it is all by grace. Read it in the 11th chapter, the 5th and 6th verses of Paul's letter to the Romans. So now I have stated that, but do not think for one moment when I tell you I have been called and sent, that in any way I am trying to act superior. For there is no intrinsic superiority to those who are called. Now he uses an analogy I do not think adequate, but you can read it in the book itself. He uses the analogy of the human form, and not all are head, eyes, nose, teeth, and so on. But that is a weak analogy. Nevertheless, he uses that to show you the different parts in one body. But now to come back to make this a very practical now. Believe me that when you say I, before you say I am John, I am Bill, I am this, I am that, I am the other, you are declaring yourself to be. And that sense of being is God. That's God. Now what are you going to put on? All things are possible to God. All. You could say now, as you're seated here, after first affirming that I am, you could then assume that I am, you name exactly what you want to. If you believe what I tell you about your own I amness, and remain faithful to what you have assumed, that assumption will harden into fact. When you pray in the true sense of the word, you do not pray to any external God. That was my command when I was sent down with the blue blood. Has nothing to do with the social structure of the world. It has only to do with church protocol. All external worship, all ceremony, everything that leads the individual outside of himself. To put a little cross on the wall and then bow before it and see it as something external is not what Scripture teaches. Buried in the Old Testament there is a pattern. So he said, taking the 12, we're going up to Jerusalem, and everything about the Son of Man, which is the I of man, will be accomplished. But they did not understand what he said. It was beyond their ability to grasp. He is going up, and only the one who has experienced Scripture, which means he has actually resurrected the pattern, playing the part that is the central part of Scripture. He resurrects the pattern, all within himself. He plays all the parts. He is the one who is born from above. He is the one who comes out of the grave, unassisted. He is the one whose three witnesses bear witness to his birth from above. He is the one they cannot see because he is now spirit, yet more real than all the flesh in the world. He is the one who actually sees his son, David. And David calls him father, and he knows he is David's father. And David knows that he is his son. He is the one whose temple, the body, is split into from top to bottom. It is he now who ascends like a fiery serpent from the base of the spine up into the stars. He is the one on whom the dove descends and lights upon his hand like Noah in the ark. And as Noah brought the dove into him, you bring the dove to you, for man is the ark of God. And as the ark contains all things within itself, man contains within himself all things. Everything he creates from within himself. And this pattern, the individual awakens within himself. And who does it? The I of man. And that is God. Now tonight you can test it, that you are called upon to test it. Test yourselves and see. Do you not realize that Jesus Christ is in you? Unless, of course, you fail to meet the test. Examine yourself to see whether you are holding to the faith. What faith? Have someone tell me that I am a Christian, I am a Jew, or a Mohammedan, and holding to that faith that they talk about? No. The faith that I'm talking about tonight, that your own wonderful I amness is God. Test it to see if you're holding to that faith. If you're holding to that faith, and all things are possible to God, you should be able to prove it in the testing. She's not here tonight. She promised she would write me a letter, having told me the story on Friday. But I know she finds it difficult to express herself in writing. She can paint and paint and paint, and do all kinds of lovely things in painting, drawing. When I say to her, please write it that I may tell it to my audience before I close. I have no future plans after I close on the 29th. So I would like to share your experience with you, to encourage everyone in this world to do what you did. Well, the letter didn't come, I can see her, struggling over one page, and rubbing out a line because she didn't spell the word correctly, and going over the next one. But she can take a piece of canvas, a piece of paper, and do miracles with it. But because she is restricted in writing a letter, she didn't send the letter. But the essence is this. She is now a divorced girl with a little boy, handsome little fellow. Well, when you're living alone and you need money, and you have a child to support, and you have a home, all the things, and the money isn't coming in, then you're up against it. So she said, I blew my tongue, as you're told in the Psalms to do. She said, then I applied this principle. I assumed that I had exactly what I need plus and plus. Then I got a call from First National City Bank of New York City. Now that is the second largest bank in our country. Bank of America comes first, they are second, and Chase Manhattan is third. Given me an order, she has no agent. This is an unsolicited statement. An order for $5,000, which she can execute and deliver within a month. Well, the First National City Bank of New York is not going to be hard-pressed to pay her immediately $5,000. If she called them and told them to pay in advance, they would willingly pay in advance. And she said, I can execute that order in 1 month. But I want the details. I had hoped she would send me as she promised last Friday, but knowing her restriction concerning the use of words. You can use the brush, use the pen, and use the pencil, but she's limited in the use of words. Eventually, she will send it, but I hope to have it by tonight. So I could give you exactly what she did, but this is what I did. Having convinced myself through experience, I have come to the conclusion, because I am aware that I am, that is God. For if by him all things are made, and without him is not anything made that is made, and I start from scratch, only imagining a state, and then I boldly assume that it is real, that I am actually experiencing that state now. And then in the not distant future, that state crystallizes in my world. Well, then I have found God. I have found the source of the phenomena of life. My only concern then is to share it with others and tell them, for they're all one. We are one. No one is greater than the other, not fundamentally. In his claims to what he is in the world of Caesar, he has more money, or he has so-and-so and so-and-so, but basically the same creative power in the man tonight behind bars serving life is the same creative power of the one who sentenced him to life. Is the same being. There is only one God.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in tonight. Let me just double check audio is okay. So tonight I'm doing a lecture called Infinite States. And in the lecture you just heard, that's another one of Neville's later lectures. I think it's God and I Are One. That might have been actually one of the last lectures he ever gave. And so in the beginning of that little section you just heard, he's talking primarily about the promise. But in the latter part where I cut it off, he's talking about the law. And the Infinite States lecture is primarily concerned with the law. Most of the lectures I'm doing to start off with are about the law, because that's what most people are interested in, and that is what Neville himself recommends when you're telling other people to start with that, because it draws people in, because it tells them how to have, do, and be anything they want to experience. So Neville uses the term states a lot, and so this is probably, I mean, there's a lot of times where he really gives a great concise definition of it, but this is one of the lectures where that's the primary concern, and he succinctly describes it. And it's pretty much what you think it means, and the phrase state of consciousness, I think, should have enough personal meaning to you by now, that that you really don't need to hear his version of it, but once people kind of get more immersed in teachings and seeing that this is how their life is operating, they want to understand the mechanism a little bit more. And language is a tool to help you understand. And state is one of those words that comes up a lot, especially as you're trying to describe movements through consciousness. But we'll get to that pretty quickly. The thing I just wanted to say, and it's really kind of a reiteration of my beginning rant from last week, is so there's nothing in your reality, in your exterior world, that is more likely to tell you what state you're in than anything else. Now, maybe there's a case where you are wondering if a specific assumption of yours is really operating or not. Let's say you've recently assumed the state that you have healthy and harmonious relationships. So you tend to look at, well, how are your relationships shaping out, as opposed to looking at how much you enjoyed making coffee this morning as an indicator of whether or not your new assumption is really part of who you are now. So that makes sense, but when I initially brought up the rant, it was specifically addressing people using tarot to try and figure out if they're really in the proper state or not. And it's like, I just think if you're going to use something like that as an indicator, it's usually an abdication of power, and it's usually admitting that you really haven't assumed that you already have what you want. You really haven't assumed the state of the wish fulfilled. And I elaborated on that, and I'll quickly elaborate on it again because it's the same point I make when it comes to questions people ask, which is, if you had what you wanted, you fully got it, you fully have it, whatever it is, whether it's a certain job, a certain amount of money, a certain amount of success in your creative endeavors, it's a certain relationship with a certain person, it's a certain bodily condition you desire for yourself, whatever it is that you desire, or a combination of these things, whatever. If you already had it, totally, completely manifested out, would you be asking me this question? Would you be getting a tarot reading about it? Would you be asking yourself, why hasn't it happened yet? No, it's already happened. You already claimed it. It's already yours. You've already experienced it. That wouldn't be the primary thing on your mind when it came to this. Your thoughts would flow naturally into those of already having it, already possessing it. And for the most part, you wouldn't think about it as much. Just because if you examine the things you already objectively have, right? You're not thinking about them as much as something that you have pain over not having, or like if you're in a position of really strongly experiencing not having something, your thoughts of anguish are going to be your dominant state. And so if that's your dominant thoughts right now, you really don't need tarot cards to tell you that's where you are. But the blessing here, the comfort and assurance and power of the law is that at any moment, so right now, admit to yourself, yeah, I'm in that state of not having it. Well, right now, you can assume you have it. However you want to do that, it can be a scene, it can be a single declaration within your mind. Whatever you want to do, you can hear a conversation again. However you prefer to operate your imagination, it is your divine prerogative to right now assume fully that you are the person who has this. And so that's primarily what Neville's talking about when he talks about states. And really what I'm just talking about there is being faithful to what you've assumed. Because certainly if it's something you really want and have wanted for a while, at some point you've assumed you're going to get it. At some point you've imagined what it's like to have it. You need to stay faithful to that. You need to stay faithful to you, who you are as that person, and that is the meat of States tonight. Let me kick it over to the live view of the reading. And by the way, if anybody has questions at any point, you can always. Oh, and before we go into it, let me give a shout out to Campbell, because yeah, he does do the music for this channel, and was live today. Well, it was a pre-recorded, but is live every Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and plays only trio on Twitch as far as I know. It's freaking awesome. Also, if you missed today or you want to listen to any of the prior streams, you go up and load one of those, play it in the background while I'm reading this out, because I don't play any music while I do these right now, and so I think it's a pretty good compliment to have that to have the music going while you're listening to this. All right, so let's kick over to the reading. Oh, and also let me minimize this, right, because I want to show this wallpaper off. I found this, and this is really cool, because I think it's a really great visual metaphor for states. Except if you were in this room and you turned around and you looked up and you even looked at the floor, you could just see nothing but all of these different windows, and you could pick any one of them and enter into that world and play a character in that world at any moment. Right now, you have a very solid identity of being this person, and that whatever you give yourself as a name is going to persist throughout your life. But it's so much more clay and moldable than you've ever thought it was before, or you probably knew it like when you were much younger, how much more you could shape it, and sort of forgot that and let other people convince you that you couldn't really do certain things, you couldn't be certain things, that there were limits to what you could experience. But in actuality, there are no limits to what you can experience except those you impose upon yourself. And so that's what we're going to talk about today in Infinite States. And like I said, if anybody has any questions, you can post them up in the chat, because right now, with less viewers at this point, it's easier for me to take a second out and answer a current question. In the future, I won't be doing that, but for now, it's fine. I just may not see it right away because I don't have a chat overlay on my screen. It shows up on the broadcast, but it's not actually on my screen. All right, so Infinite States. Quite often, someone will say to me, "I don't think others understand you. I was asked this question, when you use the word state, I don't think others know what you mean, so would you please explain it? Tonight I will try. We are told you are sons of the Most High, all of you, not just a few, but all of us. Nevertheless, you will die like men and fall into infinite states of consciousness. For states are that into which the sons of the Most High fall. A state is an attitude of mind, a state of experience with a body of beliefs which you live by. Always expressing a state, you identify yourself with it by saying, I am poor, or I am rich. I am known, or I am unknown. I am wanted, or I am unwanted. I could go on indefinitely, because there are infinite states into which an individual son of the Most High may fall. Blake made this statement, eternity exists and all things in eternity, independent of creation, which was an act of mercy. By this it may be seen that I do not consider either the just or the wicked to be in a supreme state, but to be every one of them states of the sleep, which the soul may fall into in its deadly dreams of good and evil. When you find yourself in a state, or see a seeming other in a state, do not condemn or praise it, for all states exist, and no state is greater than another. Every state is an attitude, a state of experience with a body of beliefs that an individual son of the Most High occupies. And if that an individual son of the Most High, then are we not brothers of the highest unity? And are we not also members of the ultimate body, who is God the Father? So the states into which we fall cannot mar or in any way deter our immortal self who fell. Also, a really great writing of Neville's that I've narrated before, that I think has my favorite it's my favorite metaphor for states. Look up fishing. If you go back and look at the videos on demand on here, or look at if you're on YouTube now, search for my old videos, find fishing, or just read it. It's in I think Your Faith is Your Fortune. You could read just fishing, and that's everything you really need to know, like for the rest of your life. But in that metaphor, essentially, like you are fishing, and the fish you catch are the states. And obviously there's a boundless ocean, so you catch whatever state you want. But just to reiterate again, we'll just go back over where he specifically defines state. A state is an attitude of mind, a state of experience, but with a body of beliefs which you live by. And then in here, when he's using the I am statements, those are just, so a state is they're conditions that you place upon the I am, and you're allowed to place any conditions on the I am. Okay. Your creative power did not willingly fall. It was your Father's will that you, his creative power, descend into and experience states. In the 8th chapter of Romans, Paul tells us he was made subject unto futility, not willingly, but by reason of the will of him who subjected him in hope. There is unity in God, yet God the Father is made up of gods, the sons. So God's creative power fell into division and passes through states, which results in resurrection into unity. As the Son of the Most High, you can, in the twinkle of an eye, move into any state, but the chances are you will not remain there, for a state is made up of a body of beliefs. If you spend a day thinking from a certain base, a certain body of beliefs, the chances are you will fall asleep that night in the same belief. Knowing you can move into another state, another body of beliefs, you may try to move, but you must persist in staying in the new state until it becomes natural. So there's sort of a duality going on there where, yes, it's easy to fall into a state, but you have to stay there. And this is sort of, once you've really worn a state for a while and gotten really used to it, you're used to being used to it. So even though you can fall into this new state for a few hours, you're not used to it yet, so you go back to the old state. Neville calls the old man, the old body of beliefs. You will keep falling back. But as he reminds people a lot, especially when it came to picking a new state for someone else, you do it. You just do it until it's perfectly externalized in your world. Okay. There are unnumbered states, and the occupant of one state is not better than the occupant of another, for each is a brother in the highest unity, and all are one in the body of God the Father. But the state, the attitude of mind to which you most constantly return, constitutes your dwelling place. If you dwell in self-pity, you will express the state. If you dwell in self-pity, you will express the state. But by occupying that state, you are not less than the one who has ambitions to enter the White House, or the Vatican as the Pope. The individual desiring an ambitious state is not greater than or less than the one who doesn't know he is in a state and remains subjective to it. So this is more about Elohim and more about our ultimate unity. There was this section in the paragraph before, this bit here, where he expounds upon this in my favorite lecture, That Which Already Has Been. This bit is more of what's going on as concerns the promise. So this bit is less the law and more the promise, because it's explaining the purpose of life. The meaning of life is totally subjective, totally up to your individual state, your individual consciousness right now to define for yourself. But the purpose is universal. That's the bedrock of unity. And the purpose is to remember who and what you really are. And through that waking up, through that remembering process, you come back into your total creative power, start to use it again, start to more effortlessly move in and out of states, help others move in and out of states. And at the end of that sort of, little fun playtime for yourself, you receive the promise. And the promise is a series of 4 visions that take place over the course of many years. And they come by grace. You can't, Neville says you can imagine for it, but ultimately when and really how, really kind of the order of the visions, though the 4 visions have this very consistent experience, that is through grace. You can't just say, okay, well on Tuesday I'm going to receive the first vision. That is not, that's as far as everything I read in Neville, that's beyond what you can sort of declare, even though you are the Father deciding when you receive the promise. Anyway, that's a little bit more of talking about the promise than I want to talk about today, because I really want to talk more about the law aspect of states. But because he mentioned a lot of this about Elohim here, about the idea that, from a standpoint of traditional moralism, even if the person you're criticizing doesn't agree with your stance in morality, you can claim a position of superiority to them based on who you are, your body beliefs, your actions, your behaviors relative to theirs. Neville is saying that is utter nonsense. The person is not the state they are in. The person is not even the name and the other aspects of their life that they're currently experiencing. They're I am just as much as you are I am. So don't think you're better or lesser than anybody else. It's just not possible. You're all the same I am. Okay, now here's the most practical part of the lecture probably, though he may mention one of the examples later. How do you get out of a state? Through belief. You must believe in the doctrine. You are told, whatsoever you desire, believe you have received it and you will. The precepts of Christ must be accepted literally, for they will be fulfilled literally. Can you believe the precept that believing you have already received your desire will bring it forth in your world? If so, then tonight you can change the things that are happening in your world. And if you can believe and persuade yourself that things are as you want them to be, to the point of actually moving into the feeling that they are true, they will be felt and seen in your world. You must feel your desires are already realized, that they are already true, for the truth of any concept is known by the feeling of certainty that the thought is true. Assuming you are not the man or woman you want to be, you will know that you really are it by the feeling of certainty it inspires in you. For if you feel certain, you'll act upon it. If you don't act, you are not convinced. For God in you is your own wonderful human imagination, and God is always acting. You may be physically incapacitated, but you are forever acting in your imagination, who is God, the Father of your life. Here when he says you will act upon it, he is talking about in the mind. Now you could say that, you could also say that, well, once you've assumed the state, you're going to naturally, without thinking about it, start taking actions that are, in alignment, are part of that state. So if you assume being wealthy, you might suddenly start treating your money a lot differently than you do when you assume poverty. But mostly he's talking about thoughts. You're going to think about money totally differently in the state of being rich than in the state of being poor. Same with any success that you really desire for yourself. You're going to have a different feeling about who you are and what you do throughout the day as someone who feels successful as opposed to someone who perpetually feels like a failure. But I want to reread this little bit here. How do you get out of a state? Through belief. You must believe in the doctrine. You are told, whatsoever you desire, believe you have received it, and you will. The precepts of Christ must be accepted literally, for they will be fulfilled literally. Can you believe the precept that believing you have already received your desire will bring it forth in your world? If you can, believe and persuade yourself that things are as you want them to be, to the point of actually moving into the feeling they are true, and they will be felt and seen in your world. You must feel your desires are already realized, that they are already true, for the truth of any concept is known by the feeling of certainty that the thought is true. I don't think I really need to expound on that. That's as clear as it's really going to get. Pretty much anywhere Neville's ever put this forth, the millions of times that he said the same thing, this is really as clear as it gets. If you don't get that, let me know. Or just come back next week. I'll be reading another one of these where he says it in a different way. Okay. By states, I mean attitudes of mind. The New Testament begins, the time is fulfilled and the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Repent and believe the gospel. The word, I'm so glad he's defining it, because I was about to tell y'all, the word repent means a radical change of attitude. So take, like, if you have any negative connotations towards a religion you were raised in, or a religion of someone you know, or just religiosity in general, discard that. Neville is about radically reframing a lot of words that you've encountered in other contexts, and telling you what you really were telling yourself through these words. And repentance is one such word. Repent and believe the gospel. Gospel is also the good news that you already have what you want to have. So the word repent means a radical change of attitude. So you could literally translate that to change your mind and know that you already have what you want. That's literally what's meant by repent and believe the gospel. Not anything else anybody's ever meant by it. Okay, your attitude need not be towards another, but an attitude regarding self. If you feel you have nothing to live for, you must repent by changing your attitude radically from that state. Don't condemn yourself for the state into which you have fallen. If you don't like it, move into another. Don't feel sorry for yourself, for if you do, you will make the state a habit and remain there for the rest of your days on earth. Instead, you can believe this doctrine and move out of any state. All right, here's going to give an example. Let me illustrate with this story. A gentleman who attends the lectures and his wife moved into their new home at the beach. Wanting some landscaping done, they invited 5 landscape artists to give them bids. 2 wouldn't even bid because of the location of the property. But after choosing one, the lawns and gardens as well as several trees were planted. Within 6 months, 3 trees had died. Demanding the trees be replaced, my friend decided to test his imagination. So while sitting in his car, he imagined that he was leaning against the one healthy tree, while gazing at the 3 which had appeared to be dead, but were now healthy and beautiful. Then one day the landscape artist came to the house, inquiring about the garden, especially the trees. It seemed his men had used too much nitrogen in the fertilizer, which caused the roots to burn. Upon seeing the trees, he returned the following Tuesday and replaced them free of charge. This same gentleman shared another experience with me, saying, on my way to work the other morning, I passed a very prominent building and said to myself, I wonder what it would be like to work there. Knowing nothing about the company, I played with the idea of them offering me a fantastic salary, and even imagined seeing my name on the office door. That very day while I worked, I received a call from an agency hired to fill the executive positions for the company whose building I had just passed and whose employment I had just imagined. The agency was calling to ask if I would consider working for their client. I was so shocked to realize that the law could work so quickly, but now I know it does. You don't have to remain in a state if you have made a mistake. You can change states morning, noon, and night, but the state to which you most constantly return constitutes your dwelling place. It is from there you are going to live and perpetuate until you move in thought. As Blake said, the oak is cut down by the axe, and the lamb is slain by the knife, but their eternal form remains forever, and reproduces its external form by the seed of contemplative thought. That being that you really are descended to the weakness of the flesh, causing you to experience the state you are now in. Contemplate another state, and the same being who brought your present form into being will restore and make alive the other state, the state desired. This he will continue to do until his purpose is fulfilled. That purpose is to follow a certain pattern back into the unity of being. You see, in the beginning we were drafted. We did not volunteer to fall into these states. We were made subject into futility, not willingly but by the will of him who sent us. But when we return, we will discover that we are the very being who subjected us. We are now the sons destined to return as God the Father. Okay, so he's getting more into the promise here, but I hope those sections in the law were helpful. Let me share with you a word that I use night after night. The word is David and means lover, beloved, but specifically father's brother. Okay, this is going to be a David rant that for anyone who's new to Neville, hasn't read a lot of Promise lectures, it's going to seem just off the wall, doesn't really make any sense. But he's trying to explain through language the mystery of David, which is the son of humanity. And David is the last vision of seeing David, and David telling you that you're his father is the last vision of the promise. One of the other visions is David's birth. So the mystery of David is something that Neville talked a lot about in the Promise lectures. So he's going to touch on it here, and it's going to seem really weird and like, what the hell is he talking about? But I'm going to read it anyway. Okay. We are all brothers, yet after my resurrection and return into unity, David, father's brother, called me father. The day will come when David will call you father too, for he is the father's brother. We are all brothers of the highest unity, predestined to resurrect into that unity which was broken in our fall into division. So David's name in the most specific sense is uncle. If David is the father's brother, and everyone is a brother in the fall into division, when resurrected into unity, David is he who reveals everyone as the father. Unity was broken for a purpose. God's creative might descended to experience states in order to become greater than it was prior to the descent. Having unity in thought, creative power fell into division and will be resurrected back into unity of thought once more. A cool aside, something that at the time when I first saw it I didn't know, but now it makes a lot more sense, so I want to go watch back those movies again. In the Alien movies, in the most recent Alien movies, in Prometheus, and then the one that came after I didn't see yet, David is the son of man. He's the incredibly like he's maniacal, like he's psychopathic, but he's an android, a totally synthetic being, and he's like the peak of human creation. And he basically in the movies, he goes rogue, and the way they, like, I rewatched Prometheus like this beginning of the summer, and I haven't seen the one that came after yet, but I'm gonna check that out. Once you understand how Neville's talking about David, and then watch those movies again, you're like, wow, they really combined so many aspects of the concept of David into those movies. Now, because it's Alien, they have to make it a horror sci-fi, but Prometheus, it's all about creation. That whole movie is about creation, and there's so much creation symbolism in it. And I just think it's really cool that David in the movie is literally the Son of Man. He's the man's peak creative achievement. And Neville says, "Well, that's just how that's just how reality is." Okay. So when I speak of states, I am speaking of states of consciousness, attitudes of mind which create a body of belief. My sister and brothers at home do not believe in the same Christ as I do, even though we're all born in the same family and raised in the same environment. My brothers call themselves Christians, but their definition of Christ would differ from mine. From their state of consciousness, they believe in a man who lived 2,000 years ago. Yet I would tell you that Christ is God's creative power and wisdom which descends in the states, resurrects, and returns as the being who sent it out. The day will come when you will understand all of these precepts as being literally true. Here is one to be found in the 1 John, the 3rd chapter, the 2nd verse. We are now the children of God. It does not yet appear what we shall be, but we know that when he appears, we shall be like him. How will we know him? By becoming as he is. The preachers of the world will tell you that when he comes, you will be like him in character, in your attitude towards life. You will be kind and considerate and have his fine qualities, but I tell you, you will be like him who is in the depths of your soul, meditating you. This I know from experience. It was in the year 1936 when I saw the rock that Scripture claims as the God who gave me birth. One day, while quietly sitting in the silence, a rock suddenly appears before my vision. And when he says sitting in silence, he's literally meditating. Then it divides a rock suddenly appears before my vision. Then it divides itself and just as quickly reassembles itself into a man seated in a lotus posture, meditating deeply. As I looked closer, I discovered I was seeing myself meditating me. And then I knew that when he awoke, I wouldn't vanish, but rather I would know that I am he. This thing called Neville, who stands before you, is his emanation. He brought it into being, and although you cut off its head 1,000 times, he will restore its eternal form by the seed of contemplative thought. Nothing ceases to be, because all things exist in eternity and can be brought into being by this meditative being, who looks just like you, only raised to the nth degree of majesty. You have never seen your face look so beautiful. You have never seen it contain such majestic power, such strength of character. Looking at himself and knowing there is no other, as he glows like the sun, you return to the being he is meditating in this world of mortality. When you have this experience, you will have nothing to do with anyone who claims he or she is Christ. You will let no one deter you, for when you see him, you will be just like him. Have you ever seen anyone in this world who is exactly like you? Your children may resemble you. If you put a picture of one of them beside yours, you would know they were pictures of different people, would you not? No one has the same fingerprints or the same odor as another. I had a little time out there. I don't know what that was about. YF, if you're a person, you can post again whatever you had posted, but if it was a link, it's going to keep getting deleted. You have to whisper me if you want to post a link. But if you're asking a question, just restate it in a different way, and it shouldn't time you out. Okay. No one has the same fingerprints or the same odor as another. But when you meet the rock that begot you and the God who gave you birth, you will know him because you will be just like him. When you see this being in the depth of your soul, you are seeing the one who descended into these states, meditating himself. You are his emanation, his reflection, playing the parts he dreams. And when he awakes from his descent and begins to ascend, you are he. No two seeds of contemplative thought in the depths of the soul are identical. We are all brothers, and having been subjected, when we return to unity, we are God the Father. Now you see who the word David means, the Father's brother. God the Father is my brother, who one day will rise, and taking me back to the unity of being, he will call me Father. That is David, that is the play, that is the mystery of life. Now to come back to the beginning. Everything is a state. You can be any man, any woman that you want to be when you understand the mystery of states. A state is simply an attitude of mind, a body of belief, a phase of experience. When I've explained kind of my view of states before, where because I have a couple different ones where it's like literally every infinitely divisible moment of time is a state, right? But the phase of experience one is one that for me, so a lot of people will use this when they think about states, they think about your general feeling of who you are. So, like, someone will sort of pick a theme and decide, well, that's going to be what I'm going to primarily experience for the next few months or years or whatever. Like, let's say you want to pick the state of a person who feels joy every day, or a person who is prosperous in everything you do, or the person who is totally fulfilled in all aspects of your life. Those are sort of these overarching states that you could choose to experience. And so what I've noticed is sort of looking at how my life has been, there's like a tone to different phases of my experience. And that is state too. Like, yeah, every little moment is a state. But also that sort of overarching theme that for me it can be a few days, or it can be a few weeks or a few months, where there's like a dominant expression going on. That's also a state, and people intentionally select that way of looking at a thing as a state to adjust it and move into a totally different experience. So, like, if you have been for the last few months experiencing a state of just being down all the time, whether someone would tell you you're clinically depressed or not, you just every day don't have very much energy, don't really feel good about yourself and your life and things like that. Well, just as easily as you fall into that state, you could decide that your dominant expression is now going to be waking up every day with just a naturally optimistic outlook on your life, just overall more energy, more sense of joy, more moments of genuine feeling good about yourself and laughter and positive experiences with other people. You could actually decide that for yourself, fall into that state just as easily as you've fallen into this state of malaise and a little bit of decline. It's always your prerogative to just pick. And I realize that saying something like that is considered controversial because the state I'm in, I experience a world where every emotion and thought needs to be pathologized and labeled and given this sort of sense of permanence that is really not there. Because why would you even label something as a sort of disease, whether that's of mind or behavior, as opposed to a physical manifestation? Why would you even give it that label if the intention was not for there one day to be a cure? It's just that the cure is a lot simpler, though, well, simple but not easy, right? In some experiences, because you have to be persistent about it. But it's a lot simpler than, well, let's go back and forth to someone for 50 years or 15 years or 5 years or whatever, telling them all your problems, trying all these different drugs, and see if that can get you out of the awful state you're in. You could do that, or you could also start changing your mind, changing your thoughts, assuming that you're already in a totally different state of mind. I realize how controversial that seems, but there's a lecture we'll come across at some point where Neville told, I don't know if the guy had come to the lecture or if Neville had met him through some sort of social means, but there's actually a couple psychiatrists that Neville met in his day, but I don't want to give the rant about the other famous one, but one who worked at and we'll come across the example where Neville can tell it himself, but it was a psychologist or psychiatrist who worked like at a prison, like at a place for people who had like killed other people and things like that. And he started after each interaction imagining for the different. I think it was only men that he interacted with, and saw that they dramatically shifted states according to what he had imagined for them. And so he decided he was just going to apply it to his practice for the rest of his life. That yeah, he would do the normal work of taking the notes and all that, but as soon as it was done, he would basically revise on the spot. And that's how the people he worked with had incredibly better results. Anyway, that's a totally impromptu rant I didn't expect to get into. So let's read back this past little bit. To come back to the beginning, everything is a state. You can be any man, any woman that you want to be when you understand the mystery of states. A state is simply an attitude of mind, a body of belief, a phase of experience. Now, don't be like the moon, which changes from a quarter to a half, to 3/4 to full, or the earth, which repeats itself over and over again, season after season. He never uses the word, but he's talking about loops there, where you've put, I know the example, he's going to give the example here. Have you ever noticed that at certain times of the year, the same set of circumstances happen to you? Every year is always very hot when it is time for your vacation, or you're always broke around Christmas, or that when you eat strawberries, you always break out in a rash. All of these patterns created in the world all of these are patterns created in the world of states in which we all live. And you just put that on a loop and associate it with a certain time or certain other events. I mean, you could loop anything basically indefinitely. There are infinite states and combinations of states into which God, your own wonderful human imagination, falls. Fortunately, there is a limit, which comes when infinite mercy, who is within you, steps beyond and awakens himself. And as he does, you, the one he put through the torment, awaken, enhanced by the descent into these states. And as one you return, bringing your gifts, which are the result of your experiences traveling through these states. You bring your talents, of which the greatest is the art of forgiveness, the ability to enter into and partake of the opposite. When you see someone in despair, can you represent him to yourself as he would like to be seen? And can you persuade yourself that what you see is real? To the degree that you are self-persuaded, he will become that man. Then you will have conquered by forgiveness. You will have taken him out of one state and placed him in another. Every act of kindness is a death in the divine image, for in every act you sacrifice yourself. Making alive what you no longer want to see, you die to that and live in what you want to see. So every kindness to another is a death in the divine image. By representing others to myself and persuading myself that they are as I would like them to be, to the degree that I am self-persuaded they will become it. And as they do, I die to what I formerly made alive. I lived in what I thought to be them, and then I died to that thought. I did it deliberately, so I laid it down myself. This is really the best explanation when Neville talks about your imagination is Christ, you are Christ. This is what he's talking about. This exact process here. You are crucifying yourself and resurrecting yourself. And you're doing it on behalf of seeming others at times, but it's still the same process. That old state dies. You crucify yourself in the desired state so that you can resurrect it in the exterior world. I have the power to lay it down and the power to pick it up again. I purposely laid my life down to what I saw and lifted it up to what I wanted to see, thereby resurrecting another who is myself into a new state. How often must I do it? Or here's the bit where he talks about persistence. 70 times 7, or as long as it takes to convince myself that it is true. And this is for any state you wish to externalize. When I lay down my life for another, he is my brother, for we have the same Father. As brothers, we fall into states and resurrect ourselves into the unity of the Father. So the greatest talent, the greatest challenge to overcome is the art of forgiveness. By forgiveness, I do not mean a verbal agreement, leaving the memory of what was forgiven. To completely forgive, I must completely forget the event. No matter what was said, if you forgive me, you can't even remember what I did or said. Only willing to see what you want to see, if you persuade yourself that you are now what you want to be, you have forgotten what you were before. That's forgiveness. True forgiveness is complete forgetfulness. Blake tells us the art of living is forgetting and forgiving. If you don't completely forgive, you cannot forget. For to forgive is to change your attitude towards another. And as you change, you forget what they said or did, thereby no longer keeping them in the state that compels them to do what they did. While in a state, man must play the part the state dictates, and man must play every part. God in his infinite mercy has hidden from us the parts we have played, because the shock would be too great if we were to see the horrors that we have committed as we pass through all these states. You see, when you fall into a state, you can't help but act from that premise, and you can fall into any state. I'm not telling you that one state is right and another wrong. I am simply asking you to judge all states with love. If you are ever in doubt, always do the loving thing. Then you will know you are doing the right thing. If someone comes to you and tells you they want a job, don't ask him how he lost his previous job. Simply hear him tell you that he now has a wonderful job. Do that, and you have taken him out of the state of unemployment and placed him in the state of the gainfully employed. I urge you to use your own wonderful creative power and deliberately move into the state of your choice. Make it now by occupying the state long enough so that it feels natural. Having you had a suit of clothes that felt so new, you were conscious of them every moment. I know when I bought my first suit, I walked down Fifth Avenue, thinking everyone I passed knew my suit was new. People passing paid no attention to me, but I was so aware, so conscious of my new suit. That's exactly what happens when you move into a new state. If the state of affluence is new, you think everyone knows this, but no one knows or cares whether you're rich or poor. So walk in the state until it becomes natural. The moment the feeling is natural, wealth is yours. I paid $30 for my first suit. Today a suit will cost me $200. But regardless of the cost, when the suit is new, I am aware of it. But let me wear it long enough for it to feel natural, and I will no longer be conscious of it. The same is true for a state. You may desire the state of fame. If you will think you are famous and remain conscious of the state long enough to make it natural, as the thoughts flow from you, they become a natural part of your body of beliefs, and the world will proclaim your fame. Now let's go into the silence. And I forget which lecture it was, but there was one lecture too where Neville had given that. There was someone else who, Neville, the guy was admittedly a charlatan, and Neville knew that, and the guy admitted that to him, but he wanted to be famous and have a little group of dedicated followers, and Neville gave that to him. And he kind of formed a cult, and the cult ended up buying him a house. I think it was in New York. It's in one of the lectures I just read 2 weeks ago. So he gave that to him because in his mind, it was a natural. The guy had the desire from God, obviously. He didn't see any harm in giving him to it because, Neville knew there's plenty of people who want to follow somebody, who want to worship this guy. Whatever he was teaching, Neville said he was not competent at teaching it, and it was, benign. It was benign anyway. So, let him have his little bit of fame, and let the people who want to follow him and do that for him, do that for him. And it meant nothing to him to just give that to that guy. So, and I had been interested to see that example because at the time I wanted to start showing more examples of where some of the things Neville imagined for, or some of the things that happened in the course of his unfoldings, which the lecture, just the previous stream, has two of those such examples, where the things that occurred go against the grain of traditional morality. In the two lectures we had just that I just did on Thursday, or the one lecture on Thursday, the two examples in the unfoldings, thieves were part of the unfolding. So, well, we had it was the one where there was a thief involving the lady getting the stuff, but in Neville's, I don't think he had a thief one in that one. His experience. Oh no, that he told his ex-wife story, where his then wife he couldn't get a divorce from was made to be a shoplifter so that he could get divorced from her. He didn't imagine for that, but that was part of his unfolding. And Neville's whole point was that when those sort of things happen, you have to trust that God the Father within you is not hurting anybody. There are infinite states into which people can fall, and people who are already in that sort of general state of consciousness may be brought into your unfolding to move you towards your ultimate end. Now that's a little bit of a separate issue from the overall core concept we're talking about today for states. I mean, in terms of state lectures, I don't think you're going to get much better than this. Fishing is that I mentioned earlier, from your faith is your fortune, is kind of my favorite metaphor for states. But I mean, we kind of addressed it all today. I feel like the suit metaphor is pretty good, or a pair of shoes. If you think about it, some fresh shoes you try on, they're comfortable straight away, and you're like, yeah, these are my new favorite shoes. But other times, I mean, especially with like boots, it might take you a couple months to break that in and really enjoy and feel comfortable wearing those. At the least, is a break-in of a couple days or weeks with stiffer shoes, right? It's the same with a state where, especially if you've gotten so accustomed to experiencing the predominant state you're in right now, like you've been doing it for years, there's going to be a break-in period. There's going to be a period of time where you're almost battling with yourself, where you're going back and forth. But the thing to remember is that at any moment, you can just let that go, get relaxed. Firstly, get relaxed. Just get deeply relaxed as you can, and let as much of what's going on now go. And just be quiet with yourself. And once you totally feel you're relaxed and you've let go all those thoughts, and that can be a process in and of itself of just training your mind to be able to do that. But once you're in that totally neutral, calm state, then move into whatever your preferred way of imagining your new state is, whether that is visual, whether it's auditory, whether there's an affirmation, or whether it's just simply the feeling of the thing. Like there's a core feeling that, like it's one I can think of straight away is when it comes to wealth. So a lot of times when people want a lot of money, they don't actually want a lot of money. They usually want freedom or security. And the third one that I notice a lot is they want to impress other people. Sometimes people who are dead, sometimes people who outwardly hate them, sometimes people that they outwardly hate, right? But those are, they want to feel like prominent, so and respected. Those are the sort of actual underlying desires there. So if you can identify that for your desire, like say, your desire is a bunch of money, and for you it's predominantly this feeling of freedom, this feeling of being able to do whatever you want. You're no longer constrained by lack of money. You can buy anything you want anytime you want, and like anything, like if you wanted to buy a small country, you could. If you wanted to buy a business, you could. So that feeling of total creative freedom there, of total financial freedom there, that freedom is what is sort of what you would let yourself settle into. And you wouldn't have to put a visual to it. You wouldn't have to put any sort of words to it. You would just sit there and feel that this is who you are now. And I'm talking about this is the best sort of way to go about it when you have that battle back and forth. To like go wordless on it, to remove the visual from it for a little bit is super, super helpful. Especially anytime you feel lack towards whatever this thing in your life is. And it can be lack in any sense. It could be lack in terms of money, like I just said, or in terms of affection in a relationship, or in terms of being respected, in terms of having fun in your creative endeavors. Wherever it is where you feel a pain from the lack, that's why you really need to let go of your exterior world, let go of the thoughts you're currently having that are sort of punishing you, and just be for a little bit before you do any imaginable activity towards that. Because it's almost like you're trying to put on the new pair of shoes while you're still wearing the old ones. And of course it's not going to fit over. And of course as soon as you open your eyes, the new shoes are going to fall off and you're still wearing the old ones. You have to actually let those old shoes slip off first and then put on the new shoes. All right, so I think that's going to be the end for today. If anybody has any questions, let me know. Let me kick it back over to chat time. If anybody has any questions, let me know. For Tuesday, I'll probably do another lecture. Last Saturday, I had done the game Figment, and it didn't record right, so at some point, I'm going to redo parts of that. But, for the most part, what I'll be doing is trying to stick to these law lectures. And as more people start finding this, I think I may have to go over some of them again, especially the mental diet ones, because there's just a lot of... There's kind of a... I don't want to say it's a problem, but there is a... And it really is just a pattern I manifested where there are people who have never read a Neville lecture, or who only have seen someone say Neville in like a forum post or something, or who see a phrase that they don't even know is attributed to Neville, and then it sort of gets parroted, but it totally loses the context to the point that what they're saying is now a complete misunderstanding of Neville's teachings. And it's almost like, it's like if they just listened to a lecture, if they just heard this explained, if they just knew the source material, they wouldn't make that mistake, and they wouldn't, as a result, fuck up a lot of what they're trying to manifest right now. And then overall, it's just a lot of reminders. If you've known about Neville for years, I guarantee you there was 20 reminders in this lecture that you needed to hear today. Because that's how it is. All right, so that's it for today. Oh, hey, Layla, how's it going? How is it going? Actually, now that you're here, there's something... So to give an example of how I fell out of one state into a much better state. Before Thursday's lecture, Layla and I had talked... because we've known each other for over a year now, through through like manifesting groups and stuff. And before we talked, I was kind of in like a blah state, because I had been lazy with my thoughts that morning and lazy with my thoughts the night before, and I had let myself dip and I let myself dwell on things and then get frustrated about other things, and I had just been lazy that morning in terms of my mental state. And through talking with her and noticing how much better of a state she was in, and then just talking about these concepts with her, I naturally, through the course of our conversation, fell into a much better state, like an 80 to 120% better state, maybe like 200% better state. just because I reminded myself that, look, I don't have to stay here. I don't have to mentally be stuck here. I don't have to be here for a moment longer. This is nonsense, and I don't have to put up with that from myself, because I know how to get out of it. I know how to get out of it. And just having that conversation, just remembering that, and knowing how much I've remembered so far was enough to take me out of that. It's like Neville said in this lecture here, accepting that it's true, simply accepting that it's true, that you can appropriate something in consciousness now as if you already have it. You don't have to do it. You can just accept that that's true, and that alone can cause so many things that you want to be made manifest in your world. Like just accepting that that's true, that you can do that for yourself, moves you into it. I experienced that Thursday. So yeah, that's a really cool reminder that I had that experience so recently, and been totally conscious of what was going on when it occurred. So I encourage everybody else to do the exact same thing. There was something else. There was actually a couple of things that we had talked about Thursday that I wanted to mention, but I'm going to have to put them in a rant on Tuesday because right now I'm quite in a state of being tired. So they're not fresh in my mind, but by Tuesday I'm sure I remember one of the things I wanted to mention, because our chat was really, I think, productive that day, and it certainly got me in a better state that I've stayed in since, because I know how easy it is once you're find your way back into one of these more positive states, just how effortless it is to, wear that state and really appreciate, oh, this is a really nice and fun state to be in. All right, everybody. So thanks so much for tuning in tonight. Like I said, it'll be Tuesday, 4 p.m. If it's not, I'll try to post some sort of notice in advance. Like I might put up a thing on the calendar. Like there's a calendar on the About page that shows you all that. But yeah, that's it. Tonight we're going to cut back to the music, and I'll continue that lecture that was playing when I did the intro. All right, so thanks very much. You'll have a good night.
I know that I am the cause of the phenomena of my life, good, bad, or indifferent. I have to live with it. and change my assumptions if I would change the world in which I live. But now, can I help a seeming other? I say you are myself pushed out. Can I help another? Yes, because there's only one. If your request of me comes within the framework of the golden rule, something that I would like done to me, then I can willingly help you. If you ask of me that which does not come within the frame of the golden rule, do not ask it of me. I grant you complete freedom to go elsewhere and go to anyone who will tell you they can do it in spite of what he said. Go ahead. But if anyone asks of me any request, all that I do is this. It's so simple. We are told in Scripture, whatever we ask of him, knowing that he hears it shall be done for us. If we know he hears it. Well, can you imagine you seated here on the surface of your being, a rational being, knowing something that the depth of your own being that encompasses you doesn't know? So you know, and you think, well, he doesn't know. Read that in the story of Ezekiel. You'll read it in the 38th chapter. And these are the elders of Israel that went into the dark room. And they are carving on the wall all gruesome things. And they say within themselves, the Lord does not see it. And the Lord is speaking to his prophet Ezekiel. He said, the elders of Israel say that I do not see them. Watch what they're doing, making all these abominable things within the great cavern. They will all reap them. Because I see everything that the elders of Israel, but they think because it's dark and it's a cavern, no one knows what he's doing. But God doesn't know. I have said time and again, there is no fiction in this world. You might have heard the story, and you read the story, concerning the seajacking of the Queen Elizabeth. You might have read the article in Time that some girl at Hunter College wrote that story in detail. And she was so shy when it came to the point to be read, she could not read it. She's a shy, sweet lady with a gift of writing. She wrote that in detail, including those who seemingly participated, a terminal case in cancer, and one who is running away from the law, who has not a thing to gain, and therefore is quite willing to blow the Queen Elizabeth with 2,200 souls aboard. And everything is completely in detail in her fictional story. If imagining creates reality, there is no fiction. So, someone expressed her thought and called the captain while at sea and demanded $1 million and would settle for $350,000. Well, it must have cost them, I should say, more than $1 million to stop that huge hulk in mid-Atlantic and then feed 2,200 people 4 times a day for the extra meals that they would have coming to them. Plus all the things that you put it all together, it would cost more than $1 million. And a little girl, possibly writing this for her PhD or writing it for some reason. And she writes it in detail. They gave her name so you can contact her. They gave the school is Hunter College in New York City. And everything in detail is told in that story. So I tell you, you sit down and write fiction. need not put it in. My friend wrote that she had a large sum of money coming in. And she went to town within herself, and she wrote in herself, and blew her top, as it were. Thank you, Lord. Thank you. It's drinking up tonight. So she, in the depth of her own being, conjured the sum of money that she needed. Beyond, always go beyond. So we are told in the psalm, be angry, but sin not. Commune with your own heart upon your bed, and be silent. Yes, blow your top, but do not let the sun go down upon your anger. Be silent as you commune with self. You don't commune with another, for the self of man is God. So be angry, but sin not. Commune with your own heart upon your bed, not communing with another, and then you actually know exactly what you want. And in that state, fall asleep. And in a way that no one knows, and you, in your servant mind, you do not know, it will all come to pass.